Hi, my name is Lyle Murphy, the founder of the Alternative to Med Center. And today we're going to be talking about Zoloft, its popularity as a drug, and is this drug actually safe? So we have quite a few questions here that our readers and viewers have asked for me to try to answer. And the first question is, are there significant studies for the long-term side effects of Zoloft? There's not that many long-term studies for drugs in general, because the real money comes for researching these drugs comes from the pharmaceutical companies. And the pharmaceutical companies are funding short-term research really for the purpose of getting their drug approved. So that same kind of money is not thrown at the long-term studies. The long-term studies are more, they're more shouldered by people that really want to know if these drugs are safe or not. And unfortunately, the drug companies don't sponsor that long-term, these long-term studies. And the long-term studies oftentimes say things that are completely different than what the short-term studies did, which wouldn't necessarily be good for the drug companies because it might affect their sales. So the things that keep coming up about Zoloft, a lot of things, but the weight gain is one of the number one. Long-term side effects that has sexual side effects that can be persistent and very obviously concerning, and the disturbances in sleep. So there have been quite a few studies that touch on those three things, but again, they're not as well funded as the drug studies, initial drug studies themselves, and a lot of this long-term research is few and far between. Next question is, what are my experiences working with Zoloft, and do I feel that people can have long-term success with it? People don't generally call me to tell me how well their Zoloft is working for them. So there is, just by nature of what I do, I'm dealing with people who have been wrecked by these type of medications. The population of people that are having the success, I'm sort of blind to. I would suspect that the people that are having success with it are having success in a certain sort of narrower aspect, like, hey, I can ward off my OCD, and I can live life in a certain way because of it. My mood might be flat, and I might have sexual dysfunction, but it's working for this thing that I took it for in the first place. And it may fail to do the deeper inquiries, like, well, what even caused those situations in the first place? The drug sort of makes it manageable, and that the side effects are tolerable for them. So that probably would be what most people expect out of a drug, is that, hey, the thing that really was like driving me over to the psychiatrist is like manageable now, and I got all these other side effects, but they would call that a success. Next question, in your opinion, is Zoloft one of the better antidepressants, all things considered? Well, that to me, it's like, I get these questions like, which drug is better, this one or this one? It's kind of like if I were growing a flower and I wanted it to, do a little better. Do I hit it with a sledgehammer or do I hit it with an axe? It's like, it's like you're trying to figure out which one's better, the sledgehammer or the axe. And to me, my viewpoint is like, well, maybe trim it a little bit here and add some nutrients to the soil and get a full spectrum solar light so it can have something to grow up to, or make a little space for it where it actually has, room to grow, that kind of thing. And it's the same with, a lot of these drugs, is that, okay, so, the sledgehammer or the axe might work for certain situations, but really, are you really working with the physiology of the person or the plant or whatever you're working with in these ways. So Zoloft is not one of the worst ones. I think honestly, the short acting antidepressants, kind of like Effexor, are much have a lot more side effects than a drug like Zoloft or Prozac. But I guess the sledgehammer would be my answer. Is it okay to have a Xanax and Zoloft together? Are they the same thing? They're definitely not the same thing. Xanax is a short-acting, very potent anxiolytic, or what they for anxiety. It's a benzodiazepine. It's highly addictive, and it's really something that even in the most allopathic prescribers should only be used short-term for very specific reasons. And Zoloft is an antidepressant that's much more nuanced in the way that it works. Is it okay to have them together? Yeah, you can put the sledgehammer and the axe together if that's the way you're going. But yes, they do prescribe these together. They are kind of meant to, they're taking things in a similar direction. So from an allopathic viewpoint, that makes sense. They're both able to generally reduce someone's anxiety and help a person sleep. So they're sort of doubling down on the same thing. A lot of times I see drugs prescribed that are the complete antithesis of each other, like a stimulant and an antipsychotic. And that doesn't make sense from anybody's standards. So yeah, it would make sense if you're trying to shut somebody down, try to get them relief from their anxiety, that Xanax and Zoloft could be used together. Is there a side effect of Zoloft that happens a lot more than others? Than other antidepressants, I assume they mean. Well, the typical things with antidepressants are going to be, like I said, the sexual dysfunctions, the weight gains, the sleep disturbances. Zoloft in particular may, I guess if there's one thing that might be more prominent that I can think of, that's consistent. I mean, there's always lesser common side effects that might happen with one drug and not another. But delayed ejaculation, Zoloft actually makes it harder to achieve an orgasm. So I would say delayed ejaculation would be what happens more with Zoloft than maybe other antidepressants. Okay, next question. With all the issues, why is Zoloft so popular? So why is it one of the most successful SSRIs ever? Well, marketing has a lot to do with the success of a drug. And Zoloft actually does have one feature that's slightly different as far as a mechanism. So there's the stimulating SSRIs, and then there's the inhibitory SSRI. Start over. There's the stimulatory SNRIs, and then there's the inhibitory SSRIs. They act very different in their function, right? So of the medications that were considered SSRIs, Zoloft is one of those medications. But recently, they found out that Zoloft specifically has a bit of a dopamine effect. So it may be primarily towards the sedative part, towards increasing this diplomacy and anti-rumination neurochemical that helps you sleep called serotonin. It does that, but it has a little modest to moderate effect in raising your dopamine as well. So it does have a little bit of a mood elevating effect. So that makes it a bit of a two-pronged drug without stimulating somebody so much that it may be causing them anxiety. So that might be one of the reasons as well. It has this bit of a niche-y way about it. Next question. When someone is on Zoloft, they can act strangely. Can Zoloft change your personality? Newsflash, the antidepressants are made to change your personality. That's what they do. So alcohol changes your personality, but usually it changes it in a certain tranquilizing way. these have a very like designer way of being able to tweak certain things. And like your normal physiology says, oh, you need to have some stimulation in this moment. You need to be alert. You need to like, oh, there's a curb there. You're going to fall out into traffic, and then hit you with an excitatory neurochemical. Boom, you get that, and then you know, you're going to your yoga class, and it's time to meditate to get into a certain space, and you can limbically flex between those different situations. Well, if you cut off access to one and you reinforce access to the other, which is what an antidepressant would do, there's a certain bandwidth that you may be geared into or even stuck in. So that bandwidth may definitely look like a personality change. And these side effects, as we call it, for these drugs really are the effect of the drug. They're not side effects, they're effects of the drug. So yes, it can change your personality. That's what they're designed to do. All right, if someone had to choose one, which is less dangerous, Zoloft or Prozac, sledgehammer or axe? I personally feel that Prozac is, because Prozac has a very, very long half-life. And so if you're trying to come off of Prozac, because of its near 5-day long half-life, in other words, you could not take it for 5 days, and the average person wouldn't even clear half of that medication out during that time. So it has a natural tapering, a natural feathering off of how it leaves your system. Zoloft is mid-range. Zoloft, I believe the half-life is around 24 hours, 26 hours, somewhere in there. So it does leave your system. It might be as much as 30 something. I don't exactly remember the numbers, but it's somewhere between a shorter half-life and a moderate half-life. So it'd be more of a moderate half-life. So people could experience more withdrawal ramifications from coming off Zoloft. And there are a number of side effects associated with Zoloft that it's not that they're not seen in Prozac as well, but it might be a little bit more amplified with Zoloft. Next question, is there any truth to Zoloft making people stupid? Is there some mechanism at work that makes people seem less intelligent while on Zoloft? Yeah, I mean, if you're upping a person's serotonin, there's a sharpness that comes with norepinephrine. Norepinephrine is your attention neurochemical. So it gives you the ability to focus on something, focus on a task, be very, sharp. If you're inhibiting that, the anticholinergic effect of these drugs, and you're upping the serotonin, then you may have a more blunted sort of effect. It's not necessarily making you stupid. I mean, I don't know, maybe on an IQ test you might perform less, so I guess maybe stupid's the right word, but it's bringing you more into the parasympathetic side of things, which people might associate with stupid. Like after you eat a full meal, are you as sharp about running mental calculations? No, you're kind of in a relaxed state. So that might be what we're talking about here. But then, unlike that meal, you transition from that. Zoloft, taking it regularly fits you in that bandwidth where you may look blunted and muted to other people and yourself. Okay, next question. Is Zoloft effective for borderline personality disorder? So there's sort of an axiom about borderline personality disorder that it's a personality disorder. It's not a even the DSM people, or maybe lately they have, but I know in past they never claimed that there was a drug for borderline personality disorder because it is a personality disorder. But how they've reframed it is that, well, you have symptoms that come with borderline personality disorder, heightened, emotional states, and that these drugs can help with those symptoms that are associated with it. But the negative of it is more missing some certain developmental life markers that would be best to work through with the help of a therapist, particularly one who is licensed and specializes in borderline personality disorder, to help repattern some of those gaps in our early upbringing. Next question. There's plenty of people that claim Zoloft did nothing and had no effect in their body. How can people be non-responsive to such a powerful drug? First, Zoloft is not that powerful of a drug in the realm of drugs. Antipsychotics are powerful drugs. Benzodiazepines are powerful drugs. These ones are more nuanced, and it could be one of two things for sure. One, it could have not been a serotonin deficiency in the first place, or it could be that the person is so bankrupt on serotonin that there's no serotonin left to reuptake anyway. So the particular mechanism of this drug is not a part of the person's, it's not something that could be tuned up to with this particular drug. It's kind of like if you had a car and the car was not going down the road well, and you step on the gas thinking that, oh, more gas will help it, but it's not a carburetor problem or a fuel intake problem. It's a transmission problem. So the drug itself may not be addressing whatever deficit or thing that there was there that drug is geared for. Whereas if you take enough Xanax, you're probably going to get the effect of Xanax. You're probably going to, transition out and be asleep or zombied or something. Next question. Is there any validity to claims that CBD is better for mental health issues than Zoloft? So I actually took a minute to look this one up because I believe that there are, but I didn't know what studies might be out there. It looks like there was a good study in 2014 that dealt with it. It was an animal study that showed promising for the antidepressive effects of CBD. I mean, obviously that's not human trial studies, and asking a rat or something if they're feeling happier is a little bit. I don't know if the answers that you get are quite as clear as somebody going, "Yes, I'm having a great relationship with my wife and everything's going great." So it's really not that great of studies. Again, the drug companies are the ones spending the money for studies. It's what shows up in your publications and shows up in the literature. There's not quite as much money. There's not nearly as much money to research out alternatives to those medications, including CBD. But there have been some studies that showed promising around CBD. Even some clinical studies in humans, and it seems to be that there's a balancing effect on the serotonin pathways that is a lot better tolerated than the antidepressant drugs, as far as the side effects are a lot less or non-existent, and it is having an effect at helping calm them. My viewpoint is that anything that kind of gets you into more parasympathetic state and in more of a relaxed, the feed and breed sort of aspect of our nervous system that's different than the fight or flight aspect, there's a lot of healing that occurs there on a physiological and an emotional level. And so CBD is effective at helping someone get out of anxiety. It is an NMDA inhibitor, which means it blocks glutamate. Glutamate is the most stimulatory neurotransmitter of the central nervous system. So inhibiting that gets us into a place where we can actually drop our anxiety a bit and start emotionally and physically healing. All right, next question. Are there concerns with Zoloft causing vision and eyesight problems? All of the antidepressants can cause eye watering, eye dryness. Again, a lot of what we sense and perceive in the world, whether this shirt hurts on my shoulder, or whether my eyes are dry, or how much wetness is in my mouth, is really determined by neurochemicals. I mean, of course, how much wetness is in my mouth is how much, hydration I have in my body too. But the way that it's even perceived on a tactile and sensory level for us is balanced out by neurochemicals for it to be in a homeostatic midpoint where it's not like my shirt hurting my shoulder. That's sort of drowned it out as being a normative experience. Whereas the drugs can throw that and skew that off a little bit so that things and sensory things feel different in many ways. Zoloft in particular can cause what's called an acute angle closure glaucoma, which is a specific type of glaucoma that is associated with Zoloft. So if you're having eye problems and you're taking Zoloft, there is a good reason to go see your ophthalmologist and get evaluated. Next question, if I know someone taking Zoloft, do I need to treat them differently in everyday life? No, of course not. I mean, that would be a form of discrimination on some level. But are they going to act different? Or may they not register in the same way? Yeah, I mean, they may have some personality differences. It doesn't mean that you need to treat them differently or be afraid of your friend, but know that they might process things slightly different. Next question. Is it difficult to get off Zoloft, especially after extended use? It depends on who you are. Some people can get off of Zoloft and have no consequence, and it's like the same people that can drop in a mud puddle and not get dirty. But there are some people that get stuck in that mud puddle and then turn it into a huge hole, like a grave that they live in. And Zoloft may not be as bad as the benzo class for how hard it is to get off long term, but some people get particularly stuck here. So with heroin, right? When you come off of heroin, you go through this endorphin deficient place where everything hurts, where your emotions are really heightened, your digestion hurts. I mean, there's a certain manifestation of physical phenomenon that people that have, succumbed to that type of drug have a deep familiarity with. There's not as a deep familiarity for most people with even medical professionals as to what those what the synonyms are for Zoloft withdrawal. Like what is a withdrawal coming off Zoloft? And so there's a lot of it's hard to find information for people on what's happening to them. And many people, if they were to do it more strategically and understood that there's going to be some consequences to that they can get through, might be more successful. But they're just on uncharted terrain, and they confuse the discontinuation syndrome, which might last a certain duration of time. Even the height of it might last less than a month for some people. Not all. There's protracted withdrawal people, and I don't want to exclude those people. But many people feel that onset that hits them in the first 3 days of going through the withdrawal is a depressive symptomatic relapse. And a depressive symptomatic relapse, honestly, is probably going to be something that develops over time and gets more intense over time. Whereas the discontinuation syndrome or the withdrawal from Zoloft is probably going to happen within the first couple of days and is going to crescendo, maybe in a week, and then maybe start tailing off over the next 3 weeks. So I think the biggest difficulty for the major populace of people getting off Zoloft is just misunderstanding the discontinuation syndrome that goes along with it. Last question. Is Zoloft prescribed with other drugs typically, or is it usually prescribed alone? It's probably prescribed with other drugs. I mean, it's hard for me to relate to other people's psyches sometimes. I mean, it's like I try to put my head in what's in the psychiatrist's mind, or I try to put my head in the mind of somebody that's fundamentally different than me, and try to imagine what their rationale is. So usually when you go into a psychiatrist's office, there's like, okay, there's a symptom, and okay, I want to make sure that symptom goes away. So I'm going to add this, this, and this. I'm going to give a benzo, a mood stabilizer, and an antidepressant. And that should cover all of the things that might be involved in that thing. I would imagine it would be a lot wiser to prescribe things one at a time and to scale them up a little bit to see how well they're tolerated. But Zoloft is designed to be a standalone for depressive disorders, and oftentimes it gets prescribed with other things as well. So it can be a standalone, or it can be prescribed with other drugs. Okay, and that brings us to the end of our review of Zoloft. Thank you for watching this video, and please like or share with all your friends, because that helps us get our information out there to our liberation army of people who have a better, overall viewpoint of what these kind of drugs do and some of the alternatives to those drugs. Thank you.